Hello and welcome to our next edition of Break the Silence, the podcast series that Aid to the Church in Need carries out in order to shine a light on the reality of persecution today and demonstrating many of the individual issues and challenges faced by Christians in different parts of the world. And one of the key countries that we look at is, of course, Nigeria, where there have been a whole series of challenges in which have really made situations so much more difficult for Christians in many parts of that country. We're going to be today talking with Father Stephen Ojapah, who is from Adamawa State, which is in northern Nigeria. I visited Adamawa and went indeed to Yola and found out for myself just how difficult the situation can be for Christians. Father Stephen has his own testimony, which he's now going to share with us. So welcome, Father. It's great to be with you today.
Thank you, John.
And thank you for being with us. And we're going to plunge straight in with our questions. And we're just going to ask, if we may, a question about what happened to you in May 2022, because we know you were kidnapped for 33 days in that time. Can you tell us about that experience?
Well, in summary, I was kidnapped. Yeah, but it happened on May 24th stroke 25th, early hours of the morning, when the bandits just came in the middle of the night, around 11:40 p.m. That should be 24th. There were about 15 that entered the house, and all of us were asleep. Myself, Father Oliver, and two siblings, Umi and Hassan. All of us were in different rooms. And personally, I just had a tap on my legs, and they said to me, "Katashi, Kaibaki, wake up, you have visitors." So when I opened my eyes, I just saw flashlights, I saw cutlasses, I saw guns right on my head. And they dragged me out of the house. They went to the other rooms and dragged, within 5 minutes, they dragged the four of us out of the house. And we began trekking from that moment.
Through the night?
Through the night.
You were walking?
We just started walking, and 30 minutes into the walking, first of all, they asked when they came in, "Wanini, Father?" because they saw three men, so they didn't know exactly who the priest was. So they asked, "Wanini, Father?" and nobody answered. So at some point, I realized that they came for me, and I stopped them. And I said to them, "Nini, Father," that I am the priest. And I begged them to please release the other three. It's obvious they all came for me. So they wanted to be sure. Am I really the priest? And I said to them, "Yes, I'm the priest." And then they asked me to sit on the floor. At that point, I was just expecting a bullet on my head, because before they came, a month before they came, they actually sent me a text and told me they were coming for me. That is another story I don't want to go into. But eventually, so I was expecting them to and they told me they were coming to kill me. So I was just expecting a bullet right into my head at that moment. So they now ask me a different question, which has to do with money. But again, I think they just resolved it immediately, and they will continue with the movement. So we just moved right into the early hours of the morning. So they kept us in one particular hut. Apparently, it looks like a building or a family compound where we could hear children playing. We could also hear people moving around. But where we were kept seemed to be somebody conniving with the kidnappers, and he didn't want people to know. So they just kept us quiet in that little hut together with other kidnappers. So we're there for the whole day until the 25th evening around 7 p.m. They now took us out again.
Right.
And we began another round of trekking through the night till 6 a.m. of Thursday morning, the following morning. In between, the trekking was terrible in terms of the path we walked through, the water we crossed, the situation of hunger. I couldn't walk again because I was tired. And they just said, and their rule is very simple. Once you walk and you can't walk again, they just shoot you. So I was exhausted. I just fell on the ground, and they asked me to stand up. I couldn't stand up. They just brought out their gun to shoot. So the other three that were with me, Father Oliver, Ummi, and Hassan, they just shouted and they begged me to please stand up. And in my mind, I was struggling not to be killed in their presence, because that trauma will also remain with them forever, if at all of us make it alive. So the last energy I had was just to stand up and to continue. But even when I stood up to continue, I still could not. So they were all smoking weed. So I had to beg them, and I said to myself, well, if they could smoke weed and have, you know what weed is? This marijuana.
Marijuana?
Exactly. So in my head, I said, if I could collect the weed from them, I may have some energy to continue. So I asked them to give me some weed to smoke. And they said to me, have I smoked before? I said, no. They said, well, if we give you this, it might weaken you. So they decided to give me something that would give me strength. And they gave me tramadol. Tramadol is another hard substance that people take generally. So they gave me tramadol to take, supposedly for strength. But when I took it, I became weaker. And what did I take the tramadol with? I just took it with anything I saw on the ground that looks like water, because we are just moving we are just moving without any sense of hygiene, no food, no water, no nothing. So we just saw water on the ground. They asked me I should just stop and take this water and drink the drug with. So I just stopped. I just took the water on the ground and took the tramadol, and I became completely weak. At that point, I couldn't even move. I had little strength before, but when I took the drug, the strength disappeared. So one of the guys with me, Hassan, he had some energy. He was the one that assisted me to be able to continue with the journey. Eventually, we arrived our supposed destination, and they now ask us, after we arrived, they asked a very simple question, because everybody was tired and we are hungry. They asked us, do you want to take tea? Zakusha shai. And all of us, because we are hungry, everybody just simply said yes. So they now came close to give us the tea. And guess what was the tea? Beating. Beating. They began to beat us using anything they could hold. Whips, guns, anything they could. That was the tea they meant. After the first round of beating, they just kept us on the ground and put chains on our legs and just left us there for the whole day. And that was the situation in brief, really. And after 33 days, we mysteriously came out after a huge sum of money was paid.
Goodness me. And did they try to get you to convert to?
Yeah, well, conversion thread was certainly part of their daily thread. The situation with the kidnappers or with Boko Haram in Nigeria is multidimensional. It is economical, it is religious, it is psychological. The warfare is in every dimension. Personally, they knew I was a priest. And for them, why am I a priest? Why did I become a priest? What am I wasting my time doing as a priest? Conversion will make me go to heaven. According to them, I don't know God. You know, they know God better. They can teach me the way to God. So those comments were very, very insulting to me as a person, of course. But I wasn't in a situation where I could argue with them. Severally, they have asked me to. My worst moment with them was them bringing knife to just say, it's either you convert today or we kill you.
Goodness me.
That was my worst fear. And even at that, I've tried to encourage the others to say, even if it comes with this, let us not back down.
Right.
That was I struggled to put that courage in everybody. And of course, beginning from myself. but it was my worst fear.
They would back down.
Yeah. So I struggle to say, well, even if they say, because they have said it to me, convert to Islam. Will you convert? What are you doing as a Christian? We could even release you if you convert. No, again, so my biggest fear was to say, it's either you do it today or we kill you. So, but thank goodness, they didn't take it to that level.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you've given us a sense of what motivated the kidnappers, which is very interesting in terms of its multi-layered factors driving it. Mm-hmm. But one of the key questions is, what kept you going through that time? How did you remain strong?
Well, generally, I have lots of personal devotion to Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. It's unfortunate I didn't come with my Eucharistic pin today, but I always have it.
Your lapel badge?
Exactly, but I just don't have it on my clothes. I actually have it in my heart. So I have lots of strength coming from the Lord. During that period, all of us, we prayed together.
Did you not feel that the Lord had abandoned you at this point?
I felt abandoned at different times, but I equally felt His presence when we prayed. And there was a day, one of the kidnappers himself, one of them came to me, and he saw me looking very worried. He now took me quietly behind the scene and just told me, he just held my hands and told me, Father, don't worry. Don't worry, you go back home. This is one of them, like telling me this in private. And
did you believe him?
I didn't, because you never can trust them.
No.
So I didn't believe him, but it was something. It was something to hold on to. That sense of, don't worry, you'll make it home. I really felt, I took it with a pinch of salt.
Right.
Exactly. So, but we had moments of prayer together. We had moments to actually strengthen one another. We prayed Psalm 23. We prayed Psalm 91. We prayed the Rosary daily in our hearts. And so all of those things actually kept us together.
So you sustained each other.
Yeah.
And I mean, we know that as you mentioned, there were 3 with you, and 2 of them were siblings who had travelled all the way to Sokoto to attend the funeral of Deborah Samuel, the Christian student who'd been stoned to death. And could you tell us just a little bit about these siblings?
Okay, the story is that they actually are from Sokoto,
right? Which is obviously in the northwest of Nigeria.
Northwest, yes. So myself with their mother, the 2 siblings. I mean, we had a program somewhere in the southern part of the country. So we were all coming back. On our way back, that was the day Deborah from Sokoto was killed.
Right.
Yes. So they could not continue their journey to Sokoto. And my rectory, the presbytery, is just by the road. So the 4 of us decided to just stay over in my house
there
until the situation in Sokoto dies down.
Right.
So when the situation in Sokoto became calm, their mother left a day before.
Goodness.
And then the day she left, the following day was when the kidnappers came. Now, these siblings, their own story is actually very interesting because the mother is a Christian, their father was a Muslim. And the siblings, their mother did a very good job in bringing them together, holistically. The boy is a Muslim and the girl is a Christian.
As a Christian?
Yeah,
right.
So they have a very wonderful relationship as a family together.
Right.
And they have also had lots of moments of persecution in where they were living in Sokoto, lots of moments of persecution. But they tried to leave that part of the north. For some reasons, it didn't happen until they got caught up with this unfortunate kidnapping incident. So I think at that point they got the attention of Bishop Kuka to be able to relocate them to the southern part of the country.
Right.
But they are a deeply committed Christian family who also have had their own share of trouble back in Sokoto.
So another good question to ask is, Who were the people who had kidnapped you?
They were...
You described them as bandits.
Well, again, that is the official Nigerian nomenclature for them, but they are Fulanis, they are Muslims, and they are terrorists.
Right.
Yes. Again, they use the Quran a lot in their teaching. They listen to very violent preaching for their morning meditation. They listen to the radical homilies of of killing the infidels. There was a day they were listening to a preacher, I don't know from where, and the preacher was talking tough on associating with me infidels. Infidels need to be killed. And they were listening to these homilies. All of us were like freezing. Because this was like...
Because you could understand.
Exactly. So
speaking Hausa.
Exactly. So I spoke Hausa, yes. So, and the homily was in Hausa.
Yeah.
So these were the things that like they fed their minds and their spirit with. In the morning, they woke up listening to very violent preaching. So you can imagine what they do to their captors who are not of their same religion. So they are basically Fulanis. They are Muslims, and of course also they're terrorists.
Right. And then you touched on it. You were released. You explained that a ransom had been paid, and you also had physical injuries inflicted on you. You'd walked this terrible long distance. So you had physical trauma and you had mental trauma. How did you begin to recover from that?
The best way to recover from trauma is to work with trauma victims. Basically, when we came out, we had some programs with a trauma institution in Nigeria that helped us to walk through the experience, which we did. And then we had few organizations also came to assist. But I realized that for me, the best way to actually get better was to begin to journey with people who have been traumatized in some sense. So I struggled to get few people who are willing to, assist these victims and to begin OTVI,
yes,
an organization that is helping. So that process of trying to also assist fellow victims, for me, is also very therapeutic. But basically, I think the Lord has been wonderful to me.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I spent more time listening to Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. And I think that is, for me, the greatest source of my healing, really. Just being with Jesus and Him looking at me and me looking at Him has really been very instrumental to my mental health and all of that.
Well, that's really wonderful to hear. It's wonderful that you do the work that you do because you speak and relate to them as somebody who's been through that yourself, and that gives enormous credibility. We've got one final question for you, which is, what is your message to the supporters of Aid to the Church in Need who've made it possible for us to provide the work that we do there, be it support for seminarians, building churches, child's Bibles, trauma counselling? What would you like to say to those people?
To you who have been supportive to Aid to the Church in Need, thank you. In one word, thank you. You offer help to millions of souls, churches, communities around the world that you may never have the opportunity of seeing. You may only have to read the reports and see people like me talking to you, but thank you. Indeed, your services are well appreciated and valued, and only God can reward you. God bless you.
Well, that's been Break the Silence with our special guest today, Father Stephen Ojapah. Thank you so much for sharing your witness, testimony. Thank you so much for your faith, your courage, and thank you for sharing it with us.
You're welcome.
Thank you.